Hello, I'm from the Sales Pilots and my name is Tony E. Clausen. And in this video blog, I'm going to talk to you about what stops you in sales. When I started sales, I was taught by the old-fashioned way of selling that it was a matter of convincing the customer. But what I actually found out later was that what stopped my sale was often something inside of me. Now, what stops us in sales is what I call the inner negative dialogue. It's a dialogue we have with ourselves inside of our mind. The problem with the inner negative dialogue is that it stops us from actually pursuing the customer, for going out there, doing the presentation, or asking the customers if they actually want to purchase something, because we have a dialogue with the customer inside our head. But whoever we're talking to inside our head, it's you and your feelings, and that's where we're going to start. We need to eliminate the feelings that is stopping you from pursuing the sales that you want to get. The first inner negative dialogue is, I want to avoid rejection. Now, this is a natural human reaction to a situation. We're group people. We do not want to have rejection. Subconsciously or consciously, we want to avoid that. And that's when you don't call a customer, because you're afraid you're going to get a rejection. Now, the only way you can kill that idea, that feeling of anxiety, subconsciously or consciously, of being rejected, is by acknowledging the fact that you're not being rejected. Most of the time, they don't know you and they really don't care about you. So they have an idea of you, or they have an idea of your product. And maybe they don't care about either, neither you nor the product. What they care about is what is in it for them. So when you're afraid of being rejected, you have to remember that the only way we can take that anxiety, that feeling of anxiety out, is if we put something else in. So we'll take the anxiety out and we'll put in the knowledge and the feeling of, well, if they reject me, it's not me they're rejecting, it's not even my product. It is the possibility to get to know me and my product. The second inner negative dialogue I call, I don't want to fail. And the incredible thing about I don't want to fail is that it stops you. And one of the things that we do when we don't want to fail is that we don't call a big customer. We don't seek to contact a huge potential customer, because that failing is so much bigger when it's a huge potential customer than if it's a small customer. So salespeople actually have a tendency to look for failing with small customers, not for big customers. And in that sense, they actually put all their effort in small customers instead of in big customers. So what do you do to eliminate this inner negative dialogue? You stop having focus on not to fail. Instead, you have focus on succeeding. Now, if you want to succeed at anything in life, you need to fail first. So instead of having focus on failing, you should focus on succeeding. So take the feeling of I don't want to fail and instead get the feeling of I want to be successful. And the only way you can be successful is if you actually put in the action that will lead to success. So it's pretty banal. It's not like huge, deep psychology, but it is one of the things that stops people. They will come up, salespeople will come up with the most extraordinary excuses of why they shouldn't call a customer. Oh no, now it's not a good time, or they're probably busy, or I don't have the right brochure, or I'm not content with our website. They'll come up with all kinds of excuses in order to avoid failing. So take your feeling of I want to avoid to fail, which I can understand, and instead replace that with the feeling of I want to succeed. And the only way you can succeed is if you actually go out there and do it. So have focus on succeeding and never on anything else, just succeeding. So that's the way you eliminate the second feeling, the inner negative dialogue of I do not want to fail. The third inner negative dialogue is I do not want to impose myself. You know what? I'll write them an email, or I won't bother them right now. Now, this feeling of not wanting to impose yourself is strongly linked with the I don't want to be rejected feeling. You are only imposing yourself on somebody if you're not listening to their no. So if you want to make sure that you're not imposing yourself, you have to remember this fact. You're only imposing yourself on somebody if they already told you no and you weren't listening. So instead of being pushy, you should actually put yourself in the sense that you ask the customer, would you like to talk to me about this? And then listen to their reply. Because sometimes they'll say maybe, which is basically a no. And sometimes say, yeah, sure, I'll listen to it. And then you're not imposing yourself. You're only imposing yourself on somebody else if you're not listening to their no. The best sales action you can do is an action that you actually do something. That's the best sales action you can do. Because sitting at home aggressively waiting for the phone to call or sending out emails, that's not sales. Sales is when you discover if you can help a customer or not. That's real sales. So take that feeling of, I don't want to impose myself, and then start listening to whether or not they say no. If they say no, respect it. Because if you don't respect their no, then you're imposing yourself. So just make sure that you're listening. Active listening is a crucial sales tool for any salesperson. So eliminate the third negative inner dialogue by saying, well, I'm going to make sure that I'm never imposing myself on anybody because I'm going to listen whether or not they're giving me a straight no or a concealed no, which is often the case with a maybe. The fourth inner negative dialogue is what I call, I don't want to sound like a fool. And many salespeople are afraid to sound like a fool when they're presenting themselves on the phone, or when they're writing an email, or when they're talking directly to the customer. And they're so focused on not sounding like a fool that they sound like a machine instead. They sound like an automatic answering machine. They have a script in their mind and they just keep babbling on. The only way you can make sure that you don't sound like a fool is by being a human being. Just be who you are. This is much harder than you think. Because if you are who you are, then if the customer says no, it's basically a rejection of who you are. That's how we link it. But that's not true. It's not true at all. Basically, if they say no to you, they say no to the possibility of knowing you or knowing your product. We talked about that in the first inner negative dialogue. If you want to avoid sounding like a fool, make sure you train before you talk to real customers. Make role plays, train with yourself, record yourself talking to a virtual customer and listen to the tape. That's how you remove it. So by training, you remove sounding like a fool because now you know what you're going to say and how you're going to say it. That's the way you remove the fourth inner negative dialogue, namely, I don't want to sound like a fool, which is linked to the fifth one, which is, I don't want to say something wrong. Many salespeople are stopping themselves talking to customers because they are afraid of saying something which is not right, like factual right. And here we are back at the training thing. Make sure you know your product. Make sure you know everything you need to know about the product. Make sure that you're in the game of what is important to your customer to know before you go out and talk to the customer. That is crucial. So if you don't want to say something wrong, well, make sure you've trained. Make sure you know your product, that you know your customer, that you know what the customer is most likely going to ask you. That's the way you avoid that. Now, with all these inner negative dialogues, the case is, it's psychology. It's basically your own perception of yourself in the situation. How you perceive yourself in any interaction is basically how you see yourself in that interaction, not how other people see you. So you will actually make self-management on how will I be perceived in this. Now, if you want to be perceived as a helper in sales, that you're actually trying to help or you have intentions of helping your customer, then you can avoid the negative dialogues I went through here. But it's hard work. I mean, you need to prepare. You need to prepare that rejection is not rejection of you. It's not even rejection of your product. That if they say no to you, they don't say no to you as a person because they don't know you. They say no to the possibility of knowing you. That if you are afraid of saying something stupid, well, rehearse what you're going to say. If you're afraid of saying something wrong, rehearse what you're going to say. Make sure you have all the knowledge you know. And if you're afraid of imposing yourself on others, well, listen to them. Basically, listen to the customer. This is how you destroy the negative inner dialogue that all salespeople all over the world, no matter which business they're in, they have these thoughts. At some point of time, they will think and feel this. And if you want to destroy that negative inner dialogue, do what I told you. Have focus on succeeding. Have focus on listening to the customer. Have focus on that whatever conversation you have inside your mind, it's a conversation with your own feelings, not with the customer. And if you go out there in the reality of sales with one thing in mind is to help your customer, even if it means not selling your product, your customers will love you and actually you will love yourself. And we know that happy salespeople have happy customers, and we know that happy customers come back for more business. That's my 5 cents on what's stopping you in sales. I hope you can use it out there in the reality of sales.